Like, my big accomplishment is I feel a little better this month.
I mean, that's a huge accomplishment because you've been feeling like shit.
I was just using that as an example. It's not true.
All right. Hello, friends.
Hello, friends.
And welcome back to another episode of Pickles and Vodka, the mental health podcast where imperfect people have imperfect conversations. I'm Christina.
And I'm Lauren, and I always hate how I sound when I say that. I'm going to just start thinking of something else.
How do you think you sound?
I don't know, it just sounds like a little cheerleader popping in like, and I'm Lauren. Oh my god.
It's okay. I feel like a big old imposter every time I do it.
No, we didn't have a whole episode about that.
Oh man, I'm still disclaimer, I'm still depressed and unmotivated, and my cat is now scratching at the door.
My cat is surprisingly not taking this moment to say like, oh, you started recording, let me pull all my jingly toys out and be obnoxious.
Knock on wood. Right?
Right.
Okay, I guess I'm going to try and be professional and like get through this. So today we are talking about a topic of my choice, and it was really hard for me to pick something, full disclosure.
Yeah, and I mean, that's fine. I feel like sometimes topics just come to me, and sometimes, yeah, I struggle with like, is this too broad? Have we done this before?
Well,
so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to some old episodes to try to like think about, okay, what have we done before? What do I want to explore more? And I was listening to our episode about when shit goes awry.
Yeah.
So
one of my favorites.
It is. And honestly, listening to that episode was really encouraging to me because if you're new and you haven't heard, that was the episode that we tried to record our first guest as co-hosts. And we had a lot of technical difficulties and the guest wasn't able to make it. And we just basically made an episode about what happens when we don't have any plans. And it ended up being a really good episode.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I'm like, okay, I feel like my thoughts aren't all here, but I feel like I have a lot of things on my mind that I want to talk about, and I feel like it's going to go well because it's us, and we can just shoot the shit.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually, like, if I'm feeling really unprepared, I tend to hold that one in the back of my mind as an example of just like, well, if there's literally nothing that I have planned, then we have been able to wing it. There's proof.
Yeah. And of course, like, sometimes I also feel like talking about our process is boring. I feel like people get really tired of hearing us talk about how hard it is to make a mental health podcast when we're depressed and anxious. But honestly, I feel so insecure about it. Like, I've been doing this for over 4 years. You've been a co-host for a good chunk of time now.
Yeah.
And it's still, it doesn't feel like a job. It almost feels like a gargantuan task sometimes that I'm not ready for. Like, it feels like therapy sometimes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you don't always want to go to therapy.
Right. But if it's not there, because that was one thing I noticed this week, you know, since I am so busy, I do have, my dad is probably going to be here within, I don't know, like 3 or 4 hours. And of course, you know, he's just planning it all on his own, regardless of what would be convenient for me. Like, I got the message from him yesterday that was like, I think that I'm just going to come straight to your place first. I'm like, great. I didn't need any preparation. Thank you.
What are y'all going to do? Tell me what the plan is.
I have no idea.
So he's coming into town for this event, right?
Yeah, and that's tomorrow night.
Okay. Are you excited about it at least? Maybe excited is the wrong word.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something to do. It's somewhere to go.
And yeah, it's nice. I have 2 of my friends are going to go because my dad gets this whole like VIP table for this dinner event and didn't, you know, like have all the seats filled. So he said, if you have anyone that wants to come. So it's very nice that I have 2 of my friends here coming because, you know, that will be some buffer between me and my family. Yeah.
I love bringing my friends to meet my parents because it's entertaining because, you know, my parents are goofballs, spoken as a goofball. It's genetic. We're just a weird family and it's fun seeing our friends like notice that. It's also very validating, that moment that my friends realize like, oh, this is why you are the way you are. So much makes sense now.
And it's particularly funny for this because I think I've alluded once or twice, my dad, is very, very strong Republican, Fox News, loves Trump, all that kind of stuff. And my one friend who is coming is probably my most outspoken, like really political, liberal, feminist, pro-abortion, all this stuff. and like she's heard about my dad, so like she was happy to come, but I mean, she was like mostly joking. It'd be kind of funny if she wasn't. The first thing that she said in response was she's like, "So I should probably talk politics with your dad that night, right?" I was like, "Yes, please. We'll have a second show."
Oh my God, I'm just sitting here with a huge grin on my face. This reminds me of, I was dating someone, the person that I was dating when I started the podcast, actually. We were living in DC together, and it wasn't the strongest relationship, but we got along, and we had very similar political views. And so I remember one time I took him to this brewery, because I was drinking at the time. I went to this brewery with him and my dad, and they started getting into this argument over politics, and I was like, am I turned on right now? Like, I didn't realize that was something that turned me on, is like my significant other fighting with my dad over politics.
That's, because I hate that so much with my parents, like, and me. I mean, I've tried to lay down the law, and sometimes they suck me into it, and I have to catch myself that I've said for years I refuse to discuss anything political with them. Like, let's just know that we disagree. But yeah, I could see kind of enjoying that if I had like a partner that was just like, well, I'm going to take that for you and say like,
yeah, I mean, a partner, friend, whatever.
Exactly.
I feel like you're going to have fun with that. I do have a question though, because you're about to go to treatment and, your mental health issues are taking up a big part of your life right now. Your parents don't know about this.
That's right.
And I'm wondering, are you a little distracted right now / nervous?
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, talk about that.
Well, one of the friends that, I don't know her political views, the less outspoken but political disagreeing one for my dad is, friend of the podcast, Vicky.
Vicky! I was wondering if one of them was her.
Yeah, but that will be good. I felt like to have her too, because I do know, like she actually does know.
Yeah.
The other unnamed friend, she also doesn't know anything, because I don't prefer to tell all my friends either if I don't have to, just because I have in the past, and I don't know, you start to feel like they're all, whether they are or not, you start to feel like they're all kind of looking at you, just like, oh, she's got her problems again.
Well, it's funny you say that, because one of the topics that I was going to pick, and that I didn't, but we should talk about it in the future, is identity. And like, You're absolutely right. When you do make your mental health issues open and you talk about it a lot, people do look at you differently. And I think it's interesting that we are kind of opposites in that regard. Like, I have been open about this stuff for 4 years plus, and I talk about it all the time, but people do look at me differently, and I have lost friends over it. And I don't know, you're like the opposite, where you don't necessarily talk about it. And I don't know, there's pros and cons to each. And I think it's interesting that we both come from those different points of view.
Like once or twice, I felt like I got some sort of strength from actually saying like, all right, I'm going to be, like totally open about this with everybody. So just at that point, so people might know that like, oh, I've known you for 20 years and didn't know like you were always struggling with this, like that was nice to disclose and let people in. But like I said, to me, it just feels like when it's over and over, that's what I don't feel like being looked at like that girl.
Yeah, it's like, you've been struggling with this for so long. Why aren't you better yet? I mean,
because that kind of is everyone's, sadly, that is a lot of people's view that aren't in the thick of it or whatever.
It's my own view towards myself.
Yeah,
why aren't you better?
Sometimes mine too.
But that's the thing. How much of this comes from our own perceptions? Like, I don't know. I always think people will react negatively to it, but most of the time they haven't, and most of the time they actually had an idea something was going on.
Oh, see, I don't think that many people act negatively. Debatable if I'd call it negative or not from my family, which is why they're main people.
Well, yeah. I mean, you've shared stories before about why you choose not to.
But I do feel like everybody that is not specifically like dealing with this kind of stuff and don't know that that is their view. If you say like, oh, like I have to go to residential treatment for this thing that, has been a part of my life. And they see it as like, oh, okay, that's what's going to fix you.
Well, we hope it'll fix it.
Right, but usually it's not that easy, and people don't get that because they think like that's your solution. You're going to go off and you're going to come back fixed and you're going to be fine. And it's like, it's not quite that simple of a path.
It really isn't. And I mean, when you're younger especially, you do hope that it's like a temporary thing. Like it's a phase. You hope it's a phase, and everyone around you hopes it's a phase. And then as you get older and it becomes obvious that this is something you're probably going to struggle with the rest of your life, like people don't always react well to that. I mean, it's hard enough for us to accept it. Like think of our loved ones, like they don't want to think about you struggling like that for the rest of your life. Like most of the time they're just trying to help.
And I guess it's maybe people that don't have as much like personal experience with that kind of thing. Because I can even think, as we were talking, like, oh yeah, even when I was young and wouldn't have as much experience, then I remember being, maybe like 10 or 12. And my view on someone going to rehab for like drugs or alcohol is that, you struggle with this until you go off and then they fix you. And in the very rare case, then, you might relapse at some point, but usually that's it and you're fixed and then you just are done. And that was really like how I saw it at 10 or 12. And now I know like that's not even close.
Yeah. I mean, I'm at the point now where it's the opposite. I feel like when someone does go to treatment, I hope that they get better, but secretly I'm just like expecting the worst because that's how it's been for me.
Yes.
And that's a shitty way of looking at the world.
But unfortunately, I think if you look at it, I mean, not saying that most people never get better, but usually it's not the first time.
Well, it's a spectrum. Like mental health is a spectrum, and just like physical health problems, a lot of people have mental health problems. It's part of their life. They make it work or they don't. But you can't just narrow it down to like one solution for everyone.
Yeah. And I mean, in the case of me, like going into eating disorder treatment, then I kind of like was down on myself after like immediately going back after the first time until I kind of realized like, I dealt with this for like 20 plus years before I went into treatment. Did I really just think that 4 months was just going to magically erase all of that and fix it?
Well, I mean, if you did, I wouldn't blame you.
It was like, I worked on it. It got better, but yeah, it wasn't immediately just like 22 years and 4 months fixes it all. You're done.
Yeah.
Bye.
I've kind of been in the same mindset this week, like just feeling the weight of my mental illness and just really feeling like this is never going to end, which is what depression does. It makes you think that it's never going to end, but also like you got to be realistic. Like there is a high possibility that this is just never going to end and that you're going to have to find a way to live your life in a way that helps you survive,
Yeah, for a lot of people, I'd say it never does end. It does get better.
Yeah, it can, and in some cases it does get better, and it's hard to see that.
Yeah, I feel like that's the middle. Like either end of the spectrum is either you just it's all gone and you do not feel this anymore, or you never feel better. Unfortunately, those are the two extremes. But most people, I think, are in the middle.
Yeah, and that's okay to be in the middle. We should celebrate that. Like we're alive.
Yeah. Like, my big accomplishment is I feel a little better this month.
I mean, that's a huge accomplishment because you've been feeling like shit.
I was just using that as an example. It's not true. I'm still about the same.
I was like, oh my God, you feel better? That's amazing. I woke up this morning feeling like absolute shit. Mornings are the absolute worst for me. I don't know about you. Like, I just hate mornings. I hate waking up and feeling like the pit of anxiety start to grow in my stomach and knowing that it's going to last all through the day. Like the sun through the windows, knowing I have to get up and deal with the world. And it's just like debilitating.
Yeah.
But I will say I'm feeling pretty good in this moment. I got up and I took a little walk and I drank a smoothie because I didn't feel like eating, but I knew I needed to before I did this. And so, I parented myself and I had a smoothie and I went on a walk and I feel good now. Like, I feel like I'm in a spot where I can talk about this stuff.
I was just thinking as you were saying that, I was like, maybe I should have tried something like that. But then I remembered, we are having like just some really, really like cold snap days. And I just took Pico and I was like, oh yeah, remember, there was like super strong winds that had like a 0-degree wind chill. Oh yeah, that's why you didn't take a walk. Yeah.
I mean, oh, by the way, when this episode comes out, it'll be the first day of spring.
Oh, happy spring.
Happy spring, everybody. Y'all.
Yeah.
So a few weeks ago, we talked about what helps when nothing helps. And I almost wanted to do this topic on support systems. Like, I was talking to Brett, like, I don't know what to do for the topic. I'm freaking out. I feel like everything is stupid and I don't know what I'm talking about. He was like, why don't you just talk about something you're going through? And like this week, I've been feeling really lonely. Like,
oh, yeah, that's
just so lonely and feeling like I don't have a support system. And he was like, why don't you talk about that? Like, how to build a support system. And so I was like, okay. But as I was doing the research, I felt like it was very similar to those episodes we did. And most of our listeners, it's stuff that they already know about.
Yeah, but we have different takes.
We do have different takes. And, we'll talk about support systems more. But at the end of the day, I was just like, I am so uncertain about everything. Like, I'm uncertain about this podcast. I'm uncertain about like what I'm supposed to be focusing on right now. I'm uncertain about what I need. And I don't know what's going to happen in the future. And it's really scary. And so I know on that episode, we talked about uncertainty a little bit. And I wanted to just really have more of a deep dive discussion into it today.
I mean, if anyone's feeling uncertain right now, it's this girl.
I'm so uncertain all the time. Okay, I know what I'm going to do now. So I have a journal entry to read.
Okay.
So speaking of treatment, you're about to go to treatment. I went to treatment 2 years ago, almost to the day. And so I was thinking about like what you're going through, and I was going through my old journal entries from when I went to treatment to try to come up with maybe something we could talk about. And I found this entry from March 24th, 2021, and it's all about uncertainty.
Okay.
And so I'm just going to read it. So by this point, I had graduated from residential, and I had just gotten to PHP. And when I went to residential, I was obviously feeling really uncertain, but my most pressing concern was just to like get myself there. Because I knew that was the only thing that mattered.
In that spot. Yep.
Exactly. And so like, and residential is very intense and you're constantly like working. PHP is also intense, but like you at least get a break to go home. So I found myself struggling even worse in PHP and feeling like even more like this is pointless. I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like I just went through all these weeks in residential and I'm still feeling like nothing's helping.
Side note, I know a lot of like the therapists and stuff that I had when I've been in treatment in the past. They have all agreed that they said like PHP is the hardest. PHP is where the real work gets done.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So this entry is from my second day of PHP. Little backstory. Okay. I'm about to go through a door, and I don't really know what's on the other side. I've heard stories, of course. People who have been there before. People who built the door in the first place. Brave adventurers whose shoes I can only hope to fill. They tell me I'm ready. I mean, I know I have the tools to face whatever lies beyond, but I'm still scared. The place I'm leaving has transformed from alien to comforting, and I'm talking about residential, as the place I'm leaving. It's transformed from alien to comforting in a way that makes my heart feel a pang. Of early onset nostalgia? Of gratitude? I'm not quite sure what to feel. My mind has undergone radical evolutions. The person I was before is a fuzzy image in the past. I can turn the dial and get a sharper image if I want, but I'm not sure I do. I stand in the doorframe and hesitate. Will I be alone on the other side? How long will I last before the strange new environment gets me? I stand up straighter and will myself to find the courage. And then on the opposite page, I made a collage. and it is just of this big door, a picture of a door.
Okay.
I'll post it to the Instagram. But like, so much uncertainty. And I thought about you when I read this because I feel like you're kind of in a similar spot, even though you have done this way more than I have. Like, you know a little bit more of what to expect, but that doesn't mean it's not scary.
Yeah, I mean, I've been before. I've been to the place I'm going before. That was a while ago, and, a lot of things have possibly changed since then. But I've never had to leave this particular job. I don't know how they're going to respond.
Yeah. I mean, job aside, too, like, every time you go to treatment, it is different, and you don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, you don't know if it's going to work. But also, what does that mean? Like, how do you know if it's worked?
Exactly. With me very, very resistant for a long time and not wanting to, that has been one of my big arguments with my dietitian who has been pushing it. And I flat out know that obviously she can't do this, but, I've always said to her, I was just like, I would be perfectly willing at this point if I could get, like a guarantee from you that this would be the last time and this would do it for you. Which, of course, you can never get.
Yeah.
So
you're left with all this uncertainty. And I guess I wanted to ask you, like, what you feel most uncertain about right now and, like, how you've faced those, like, uncertainties in the past. I mean, I'm thinking about moving to Virginia. Like, after I got out of treatment and after I did all that, I moved across the country to... I don't know what. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know if it would be good. I had a feeling it would be the right decision. Like, we've talked before about gut feelings. Like, I had this little gut feeling that I was supposed to make this big change, and that's what led me to treatment, and that's what led me to move. And even though, like, almost 3 years later, I still feel like I didn't make the right decision sometimes. And I think that's the feeling that I want to address in this episode is, like, what do you do when you are constantly having to navigate life, making decisions, but every decision you just feel like is the wrong decision?
Yeah. I mean, right now, I feel like this past week, I just got really struck by the idea that if I really wanted to just kind of like kickstart all of this on my own and I didn't really need to go through this treatment thing. And I thought, I got in my head the idea that it was like for literally half of what I am going to pay to go here. And mind you, my main payment is just going to be my out-of-pocket insurance. Obviously, it's not paying the cost of treatment.
Right, but it's still significant.
Still, yeah, I was just like, I could just take half of that cost and I could take a week off and go on the most kick-ass vacation for that amount of money. I was like, God, yeah. Pico and I could go to Mexico and I could just like chill out and just say like, I'm going to indulge myself in whatever I want and just use that and be like, yeah, let's just kickstart off some like, let's start being healthy and I'm going to start on my own. And I was like, I could do that and I could enjoy it and it would cost less and I wouldn't have to leave work for months. So I was like, why don't I just do that? And I was like researching resorts and things like that. Oh my God.
But the thing is, like you said at the top of the last episode, if you could have done that, you probably would have.
Exactly. And obviously, like in the back of my mind, I still knew that was the case. I just let myself like indulge in this fantasy for like 3 days this week.
There's nothing wrong with that. And the thing about those kind of alternate solutions is that there is something romantic about them because even though they're fantasies, it's a plan that's certain. Like you can go, you can buy a plane ticket, you can book a hotel, you know what you're going to do. Whereas treatment, you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, when I think of that, I still don't know, like especially because I'm really nervous about leaving work for so long. And I'm just kind of like, well, maybe I will feel okay enough after like 3 or 4 weeks in residential and be like, I'm ready to move on. And
yeah. But you can't think of that far ahead though. Like that's just putting too much pressure on yourself.
Because that's the thing is that I'm like, I have to think like, well, and maybe they'll be like, hey, nope. And it'll be more like 10 weeks there. And I'll be like, oh my God, that's a big chunk of time to be away. But you don't know. And that is, there's that uncertainty. It's just like, I don't know what my next several months of future are going to be.
Yeah. In my journal entry, I used the word nostalgia to describe some of the feelings I was feeling about leaving residential. And I think it's interesting because when I went to residential, I was obviously feeling really uncertain and scared and all this stuff. And it was only after I left that I was able to look back at it fondly and think like, oh, I missed this time in my life. And it's because it was no longer a mystery to me. Like I had gone through it. I knew what to expect.
Yeah.
And so I think it's interesting, like, have you ever felt that nostalgia for the past? Like, even though it sucked?
Yes.
Like, the future is so uncertain. At least the past is concrete.
And that's a big thing that I feel like I've kind of like struggled with in my head too, is, yeah, the first time I went, I was just flat out terrified, of course. But also the first time I went was one of, I don't know if it was just because it was new and I was really, just like willing to give up everything or what, but at the end it was like you said, and I really felt actually like I had stronger connections and I was involved and I belonged more than I had, in several years in anything in my life. So yeah, I did sometimes miss that. And then times when I'd have to go back, then I would start to judge myself about that and be like, do you just actually kind of want to? Because, once you get there and get involved in the community, you kind of like it.
But the thing is, we do like it to an extent. Like, at least for me, I do like being in treatment. I like being separated from the world, surrounded by fucked up people like myself that I can talk to about this stuff, unhinged. It is kind of a fucked up vacation. I don't know. And that's the thing, like when you're young, you have your whole life in front of you and you do have like expectations. And like, I feel like at this age, I should be more certain of things, but I have never felt less certain in my life. And I think it's because like, I've been finding so much comfort in Reddit this week. I found this amazing subreddit called Women Over 30.
Nice.
Shout out. It's just been really comforting to me to go through posts and like see that I'm not so alone and that there's people that have gone through this stuff and that are still going through it, that are older. And a lot of things that people say are that people who have established like really fixed goals for themselves early in life, like, I'm going to graduate college at this age. I'm going to get married. I want to have this job. I want to go travel here and there and all this stuff. Those are the people that struggle the most with uncertainty and like depression and anxiety later, because you realize like, oh, I can't plan out how my life is going to go.
Yeah.
This is all over the place also. I'm sorry. I'm going to be talking a lot, but but I made a voicemail I'm not going to play, but I'm going to try to summarize the gist of it. So I was stoned and I was sitting in my bathrobe in my bedroom thinking about what if I got cancer and died? Because I feel like I've had this premonition that I'm going to die of cancer because like I have it on both sides of the family and I treat my body like shit. And I was walking myself through this scenario in which I died of terminal cancer. And in this scenario, I had recovered from my eating disorder and addiction, and I was, doing well and, inspiring people with my story. And then at the end of all of it, I still get cancer and die. Even now, talking about this, I feel kind of like stupid, but we all do it. Like we all think about this stuff.
Of course.
And I was thinking, what would I say to people after going through all that and then just dying of something like that? And I was thinking like, I wish that I had realized sooner that I can't control anything. Like, I've struggled with anxiety my whole life. And at the end of the day, like, being anxious and scared that something bad is going to happen is not going to protect you from something bad happening. And that's really scary.
It's so weird. I don't know if you would have read this. You keep making me think of this one book.
Tell me.
Have you heard the author Jodi Picoult? She's pretty popular.
Yeah. Actually, the first time I went to treatment at 17, someone got a Jodi Picoult book taken away from them because they talked about like suicide or something in it.
She has this book that was one of her more popular ones called Her Sister's Keeper or My Sister's Keeper or something
I've heard
like
of
that.
it. I've never read it.
Yeah. So I did read the book, and then years later they made a movie of it. And I saw the movie. It was straight up awful.
Is that a future movie review?
No, it's not worth watching. It's like worse than a Hallmark movie.
All right, you heard that here first, folks. Don't watch that movie.
But here's the main reason is because they changed it. Like the focus of the book is the idea is this family has a girl, with like treatment resistant cancer, and they kind of have her sister basically as somebody to be a donor for her. So the sister has kind of come into the family to be the donor that they need for things to save her sister's cancer. And, so this younger sister has been put through all of this stuff, even though she's perfectly healthy. And the story of the book is pretty much, like the sister doesn't want it anymore. So she actually like hires a lawyer against her family to, be like, stop using me for this stuff. I'm, you can't be in charge of my medical care anymore because of this.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. And so the thing is, at the end of the book, then everybody has understood where she's coming from. She still loves her sister and her family, but she's not going to be part of this anymore. And her lawyer, she's gotten to be like pretty close with him, and I think they appoint him as in charge of her medical care, even though her family's in charge of her care and everything. And so at the end, because I think she's in the car with him, is why she's not with her family.
Is this the girl that needs the transplant, or is this the one that?
No, this is the younger sister.
Okay.
Yeah, and so she's won her case, and everyone's like they're all content, and they've all understood. And she's in the car, I think, with the lawyer, and they're in a bad car accident, and the younger sister ends up dying.
Oh, fuck.
At the end. And in the movie, then they tell like the similar story of the entire book, but at the end, it's just like, and then the sister with cancer died. And I realized, I was like, you completely wiped out the entire message, which the movie was just like, here's a sad story about a girl with cancer and she dies. The book is like, we worked so hard to save this child that was, like compromised and struggling and everything. And we did everything that we could to save her. And in the end, you realize that life can take anybody.
Yeah. It's terrifying. You can do everything. You can be the healthiest person, and then life can take you in an instant. And then on the other side of that,
exactly.
you can be like us, just like struggling and just somehow survive for decades.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's part of my, I'm sure I'll get to work on it some more. Hooray. That's part of my, that's part of one of my big issues is that I've never had any like major issues. I've never had any detriment to my health because of things I've done. So, I start to feel almost like I'm superhuman, that it's just like, you know what? I'm allowed to fuck with myself because I am impervious to all of it.
Well, that's so ironic because you say you've never had anything bad happen to you because of stuff you've done, but like you're sick with an eating disorder, you're about to go to treatment and you don't want to, but it's a necessity because you have gone through so much shit and done so much to yourself. I mean, it's not all you,
Yeah.
It's a disorder. But you know what I mean? It's just ironic.
That's the thing that like fights in my head is because so many other people will have the stories of just like, oh my gosh, like I've ruined this in my life forever because of engaging in these eating disorder behaviors. And, now my heart doesn't work or something like that. And this I have to deal with for the rest of my life. And I'm always just like, yeah, I go and have labs and I'm fine.
Yeah.
I feel like shit until I go in. But you know what? As soon as I stop, it's reversed. I'm good.
And that's the thing about uncertainty is that in order to create like a semblance of certainty in our lives, we do all these things to ourselves that are not good, but like it's predictable. I mean, anyone who has struggled with an eating disorder or addiction or whatever, there's a common thread of like you do it because you know what to expect. And it's like the one thing you can control. Yeah. Which brings me to my next point, which is like, if nothing in life is certain, what can we control? Like what, if anything, is certain in our lives? It's an open-ended question. There's no answer.
No, that is a hard one. Like, if you're thinking about it like that, it's like, can you control anything?
Well, obviously, you can control yourself to an extent. Like, you can control what is it they say in therapy? Like, you can't control other people. You can't control the world. You can control
I'm trying to think.
your actions. Like, you can't really control your feelings or your emotions, but you can control, like, what you do with them to an extent. I say this all with a grain of salt.
I agree.
But, that's easier said than done. One thing that helps me is, like, routines. And this is not a hot take at all. We've talked about this before, I'm sure. But, like, having a routine, like this morning, I didn't feel like doing anything. I got up and I forced myself to have a smoothie and go on a walk. And suddenly, like, I felt better. And I felt like I had more power to, like, deal with the uncertainty in life. Little things you can do to equip yourself. I mean, I've talked before about how one of the big motivations for staying sober for me is that it puts me in a place where I feel like I can be there for people, including myself. Even though shit is going to happen, I know at least if I'm sober, I'm clear-headed enough to, like, deal with what comes.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add about, I don't know, things that help you? I hate springing these questions on you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you got to start giving me a list beforehand. Jot down your answers to all these things.
I know. I literally, my notes are just like a bunch of questions that I don't have any answers for.
Well, that feels like my life in general. A bunch of questions I don't have any answers for.
Well, okay, how about this? One thing that also came up on Reddit is the concept of trust. Trusting that you can get through things, but also trusting that life will go on in spite of fucking terrible circumstances. And when I say trust, it's not always a positive thing. Like, it's more like a baseline. I trust that the world will keep spinning after I have a depressive episode. And that trust doesn't really bring me comfort.
That's what I was thinking when you first said, like, trust that life will go on. I was like, that kind of frightens me, actually.
It does frighten. Like, it is frightening.
What am I going to miss is the first thing I felt like.
What do you mean? What are you going to miss?
Like, I feel like out of commission in life right now. So it's just kind of like, oh yeah, if everything in life keeps going, then when I feel ready to take part in it again, then what have I missed?
I mean, yeah, but personally, I can't think that way because then my anxiety gets even worse and I fall into that cycle of, like, FOMO where I'm so afraid of missing everything that I don't do anything.
Yeah, but then I'd say also on the other side of that is I think of that in terms of, like, in the future, then I see myself able to get back in and be part of it, where if I just concern myself with, like, missing, then it's like, well, then I'm just going to keep missing everything and we'll never get to rejoin. So, yeah.
I don't really have anything helpful to say right now. I do have, like, another journal entry. It's like a little poem I wrote that has to do with the previous one. So I was talking about this door representing, like, recovery, I guess, and I was afraid to step through it because it's all uncertain. And so I wrote this, and I wanted to share it because, I don't know, I just want to share it. So I stepped toward the door, holding my fear close to my heart. There's trust in my pocket. It's been there I don't know how long. I think I have enough to get me through the uncertain new space where fear is not allowed. Slowly, I let it go, the weight lifting from my sternum. New things are hard, and I can't quite find the words to continue, but somehow I know I'll be okay. There's trust in my pocket. I slip my fingers in, and I feel the warmth spread as I step through the door. Just me and me alone. It will be okay. And so I think the part that really got my attention was just me and me alone. Because, like, we've talked about getting hurt by other people and by institutions and stuff, and the world is just such an uncertain place. At the end of the day, you are all you have that is within your control, to some extent. And, like, it's hard to trust yourself. Like, I write about trust, and I'm talking about, like, trusting myself, sure, but also just trusting the process and trusting that if I just put in my little bit of effort, then the rest will unfold. Like, the cards will fall where they may, but I've done my part. And that was comforting. What do you think about that?
To me, and I mean, don't take this as a negative because I see it as a positive in the end. Okay. Is, like, the feeling that I got for some reason when you were reading that is that you were saying it, but you didn't really believe it.
Oh, damn, you've caught me.
But I think that's okay, because that makes me think of, and that's something that I have learned to try and do myself, is sometimes I can recognize the same thing. Like, I'm saying this and, I don't really buy it, but sometimes you do have to just like keep saying it until you do.
Yeah.
Like you have to know, like, I don't really believe this right now, but let's just pretend like I do. And eventually maybe I will catch up and will.
You hit the nail on the head, honestly. Like, you just trusting that it will hit you eventually. Like, maybe I don't believe it right now, but if I keep putting in the work and I keep doing the quote unquote right things, that something will happen.
Yeah. It's like you can paint yourself this little picture that's like, when I get there, then I think this is what it's going to be like. Yeah.
But like the first step to freeing yourself of anxiety from uncertainty, I think, is realizing that like you don't know what it's going to look like, and you need to rid yourself of expectations of what it's going to be like, because you're always going to be disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
You know that I try to end episodes in a helpful way, and I often fail miserably. I was writing down like what helps when things are uncertain. One of them is routines, like I talked about. Another is just accepting that life is random and then we die.
Oh, absolutely.
There is
I'm with you there.
So much freedom in just accepting that everything is uncertain and we don't know what's going on. No one knows what's going on.
Yeah, everyone's in the same boat.
Yeah, and then at the end we die. And it's like I was telling with the cancer story, like all of this anxiety and caution will have been pointless. Everyone dies at the end, and like anxiety is not going to help you.
Yeah, but it won't be pointless, or otherwise why would we do it?
Well, exactly. Why do we do it? Which brings me to the final thing that helps, which is honestly the only thing that helps right now, is realizing that others feel the same way and that no one has a clue.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, is that we are uncertain and it can be frightening, but literally every single person on this earth is in the same position to some degree.
Yeah, I was talking about reading through that subreddit of like women who are a little older than me, and it's like, oh, no one knows what they're doing. This is a universal problem, and especially with people like us who are neurodivergent, it's like everything is uncertain. Like even the little things, like what am I going to have for dinner tonight? Like sometimes that can feel like overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, if I can't deal with the uncertainty of what I'm going to eat for dinner tonight, how am I going to deal with the uncertainty of like my mental health? Am I going to be happy in a year? Like I was listening, like I said, to that episode of ours from a year ago, and a lot of things haven't changed. I'm still feeling anxious and uncertain, but at least I feel like I'm a little more self-aware.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, you've been dealing with this stuff for years. Is there anything that you've realized helps or doesn't help you?
I mean, I don't know. If you say like, have you felt things change or look at things differently? I say yes, but I'm just kind of like, I don't know if what helps?
Help is probably the wrong word. I guess I'm just trying to like start a conversation. That's all I ever do.
I was just gonna say that's everything that we do. We just try and start conversations.
But yeah, I'm feeling really uncertain right now. Talking about it helps.
Yeah, but I'm still. Obviously, there's a lot on my mind where I'm uncertain, and yeah, if I just let myself sit there and think about it, then you can go insane. Because sometimes you can't do anything. You can't do anything in the interim. Like if I'm gonna go to treatment in a couple weeks, I can't research and find a printout of like, oh, this is how the first couple weeks there are going to go. This is what it's going to be like.
I don't know
until it happens. I have to.
I mean, yeah, you don't know until you try. And honestly, one thing that people also recommended on Reddit, which I hate this because it's true, is like one of the best things you can do to combat uncertainty is get out of your comfort zone.
Ooh.
And try new things and like rid them of that mystery.
That's probably true. That's probably why you said that and my whole body went like, ugh.
Yeah. I mean, that's honestly why I didn't choose the topic to be support systems because I wanted to talk about like how do you start a support system from scratch, and I was like, I can't make this episode because I don't have friends and I need to go out and try to make friends to make this episode, and I don't want to do that.
Well, no, I was glad that you didn't do that either because there has to be at some point in every episode where my words just kind of all come out at once and I just bleh.
I mean, you heard me at the beginning of this episode. I could barely talk. I still can barely talk.
But yeah, I was glad that you didn't make it on support systems because that was my first thought. Is I was just like, well, my only contribution would be like, I don't really have any.
Exactly.
Cool. Let's go.
So we are very uncertain. We've been talking about ourselves for a while. And I think in situations like this, it's very important, like, not just to get out of our comfort zones and try new things, but like get the feedback of other people and remind ourselves that we're not the only people to struggle with this, and like our problems aren't the only problems that matter. We're
not the only ones just like flailing around here while everybody watches and points and laughs.
Exactly.
Everyone else is flailing around in their own world too.
And so this is a good point to say what we're going to be talking about next week.
Yeah, so it will be a poll episode. We'll get the exact poll out to you later. But basically, for a while, Christina and I have been starting off most episodes by saying, where you at? Sometimes it's how you at, depending on how we feel like saying it.
The terminology is fluid.
Yeah, and just kind of, giving an update on things that we've been dealing with in the past week, maybe struggling with, that we want to just kind of run by each other up top. And we thought giving the rest of you guys an option for that would be kind of cool. And like we have a few different things like between Christina and I that we deal with mental health related, but we do have our kind of like core issues. So sometimes it does feel like us talking, I think, is just sort of the same sort of topics. So, if someone is struggling with something totally different, then I'd want to hear about it, and give our thoughts and
just give our thoughts.
For some reason, when I said that, I was really tempted to finish off our thoughts and prayers, even though I couldn't mean that.
Yeah, so tell us how you're doing and we'll send thoughts and prayers.
How are you feeling? Thoughts and prayers to you? We won't actually do that, but
this is all over the place. I love it.
I know, but I was thinking, as well, like something that we haven't talked about that maybe someone listening is just thinking like, wow, I'd love to hear their take on like this particular issue. So if it's something that you've just been bouncing around in your head or something you've been dealing with the past couple days and you just kind of want to hear like, what's your take on that, guys?
Yeah. So what's the word you used? Open forum?
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, just want to hear from you. And I was figuring, like with every like response or voicemail or whatever, we'll just give like 5-10 minutes of discussion, and just if you want to know something specific, we'll talk about it. If, you just wanted to unload, we'll respond.
Yeah, we want to take the focus off us for a while.
It's your turn.
Yeah.
You guys do the hard work. No.
So we're going to be releasing a poll, and the question is just, how are you doing? Or like, we haven't worded it exactly, but like, tell us where you're at mentally. It could be a sentence. It could be a paragraph. It could be a voicemail. We love getting voicemails. Mm-hmm. And we just want to start a conversation and like have a check-in with y'all because, I mean, sure, the point of this podcast is to talk about our shit, but also it's to connect with y'all. And sometimes we get so focused on our own problems that we don't always do a good job of that. And so, yeah, we just want to check in and it'll be fun. Is that the wrong word?
No, that's perfect. So I was thinking, and I've liked the connections with the audience and the listeners that we've had so far. That's one of the best parts, I think, for me. So I'm just looking forward to building more.
Yeah, we've had some really good responses to our last episode where we reviewed Inside Out.
Oh, I haven't seen. Good.
Laura, 2 people reached out and they were like, I'm glad you talked about misophonia because I never hear about it.
Wow.
Yeah, I forgot to tell you. Yeah.
Cool.
And that was like a throwaway moment where you talked about that.
Yeah.
But obviously some people heard and they could relate. So like, yeah, if you have anything like that, maybe we mentioned it once, maybe we didn't, and you want us to, just tell us. This is your chance to take control of the podcast because we can't.
Yes. Control us. We are your puppets.
Yes. So yeah, that's all I got.
The only thing, if you do want to end on a more lighthearted sort of thing, the last thing I was thinking when we were talking about how, like oh, you never know, like, what your future is, and everyone's in the same boat, you know, like, everyone's gonna die eventually. I was thinking of this restaurant where I was a bartender. For some reason, I don't remember the exact wording, but one of the guys I worked with, I remember that's what he was saying for a while. So he's like, I have been conducting a lifelong experiment that I believe I am going to live forever. And so far, I have no evidence against that.
Perfect.
I know, it's basically like, every day I wake up and I'm alive. It just further strengthens my argument.
I mean, I'm going to live forever. I don't know about you.
Yeah.
Until I die.
Pico's gonna live forever.
Oh, yeah. I hope my cats outlive me. That sounds morbid.
I had a therapist, I don't know, maybe like 5 or 6 years ago. They had some initial paperwork to fill out before you met with them, and it was like some things you'd expect, but I remember one of them was like, if you could have any wish in the entire world, what would it be? And for some reason, like in that instant, it came to me, and I said, I wish that my dog and I would die on the same day. It's just like, I don't care how. I don't care if that means I have to die early. I don't care if that means he lives till he's 45.
No, I've had similar thoughts, and I've never articulated them until now because people don't like to hear about that. I don't know why. People just get kind of uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But our pets are never going to die.
But yeah, it's not like terrible and morbid to think about. It just means that we're going to have 50-year-old pets. That's fine.
Oh my God. Yeah. Speaking of uncertainty. I can feel myself starting to spiral now, so we need to stop this.
Okay.
But yeah, answer the pickle poll. Lauren, I hope you have not amazing. I almost said I hope you have an amazing time with your dad. I hope that you have a chill time with your dad and that you're able to have some fun with your friends.
Thank you. I don't know if I've mentioned this yet in the upcoming, but this is also, I'm going to meet his girlfriend for the first time.
Stop. What?
Yeah.
How long have they been together?
I don't know because, you know, he never volunteers this sort of information. I mean, I know it's been a little bit because I went back and I visited in the summer and he was already seeing her then, but I guess her and her sister were on a cruise, so I didn't get to meet her then.
Okay, so it's kind of recent. It's like under a year.
Yeah, I would say probably under a year, but possibly close to a year because, again, when I went in the summer, they already could have been together for like 4 months, for all I know.
It sounds like both of you kind of minimize things.
Where could I have gotten it from?
Are y'all gonna dress up?
Somewhat. I mean, I thought of wearing like a dress, but I was just like, I don't think I feel like it. But
yeah, that's fair. Well,
but yeah, it is. I mean, it's a fairly nice dinner, so.
I hope you have fun. I'm jealous that you and Vicky get to hang out. And I can't wait to hear about it next week.
Yeah, I bet I will have a lot to say.
Yeah.
Finally. Yay!
And
right.
Thank you, as always, for dealing with my all over the place-ness.
Oh, God. I don't have it, too.
Yeah.
And we look forward to hearing from everybody else.
Yes. Let us know how you're doing. Yeah. We'll see you next week.
All right.
Bye.